again, welcome to the Department of Urology, Savai Mansingh Medical College, Jaipur. Today, we have again a special session. We are really fortunate to have with us today a very special person, and he will talk on a topic which is a little bit different from the usual topics that we discuss in our classes. So this is regarding medical record keeping. And for this, we have none other than Dr. Lalit Shah. Dr. Lalit Shah doesn't need any introduction. We have seen for last couple of decades how passionate he has been on the medical legal aspects of urology, and he has been working on this tirelessly. Dr. Lalit Shah, I will just give an introductory note that he passed his MCH from PGI Chandigarh, a legendary institute. And then after maybe almost 10, 15 years, you did your LLB in the year 2007. So this shows how passionate he was about the legal aspects of the various medical problems related to urology. And we have been witness to the various talks and presentations that he has been giving in the various conferences, workshops, and CMEs during the last so many years. So, and Dr. Lalit Shah, he was the president of West Zone Urological Society of India. He has been the convener of the medical legal things, and then he has been instrumental in making subject topic surgery specific consent forms also. So that has been a big contribution to urology. And the most important thing is that he is presently the president-elect of Urological Society of India. A great honor to the Department of Urology at SMS Medical College to have him live here and talk on medical record keeping. So I would request Dr. Lalit Shah, so please come and start your presentation. Thanks for coming once again. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. My special thanks to Dr. Shivam for providing me an opportunity to share my thoughts on medical record keeping. Now, the situation in last 20 years, as far as the medical legal scenario, and especially in India, which has changed, one of the questions for the patient's mind is, can you trust your doctor? The doctor is God when the patient is ill, and the doctor is devil when he sends the bill. This is a very, very common situation. When the patient is cured, doctor is God, and when the patient is mourned, the doctor becomes fraud. Practicing medicine in India, if you see, it has changed in the time that we joined the medicine, and Dr. Shiva must have joined the medicine. And since the time that you have joined the medicine, and the time changing with the new boys joining into the medicine, MBBS, it is fast becoming an adventure sport. And in all adventure sport, at least there is some sort of a safety measures, while we have absolutely no safety measures at all. And especially in India, I'm talking about the Indian scenario, not the others. So what is the requirement for the medical record keeping? See, as such, we have so many problems, so many laflas in our life. Our PCN starts bleeding, our TOR starts bleeding, it does not void, and so on and so forth. And to keep the medical records per se also becomes a non-medical lafla for the doctors. Because in about 20, 30 years, if you would see, forget about the institutes, it's a different thing. But when in the private, if you would see, the only record which was, or the only checklist which was being done in the small nursing homes, which serves to more than 80% of the Medicare in the country, was Paisa Jama working. That's it. That was the only checklist. So why are we talking about this now? We are talking about this now because the scenario has changed and there has been skyrocketing of the medical legal cases against the doctors. Litigations have increased. and the Consumer Protection Act, which has come over here. So whenever I'm saying you, I mean we, and I'm very much included into that. I'm as good as bad as you are. See, pre-CPA era, before 1986, when this CPA was introduced, and after 1994, it became that the medicine is also included into this. We were all God, semi-God, next to God, demigod, and whatnot. But post-CPA era, we have been downgraded. Even if you were a God of seventh heaven, probably you have been downgraded for some patient to the God of second story or something like that. And for few, you are nothing less than Shakti Kapoor and Kader Khan. So one of the most important things is that we find it very difficult because we have been loving to play God. And probably, at least in our generation, few of us must have joined just because they felt, okay, we can play God. But those days are gone. That's not available now in India. So we all have to understand that this is CPA, not DPA. This is a Consumer Protection Act, not the Doctor Protection Act. If you see the example, say for example, you are driving your Mercedes on the road, and from the sideline, some rickshawala comes and dashes against your car. His chakka gets bent, and your car gets a dash, and there is a dent there. A repair Mercedes is going to cost you something like 50,000 or 1 lakh. His chakka bend is their fault, is totally his. But what the onlookers are going to say? जो सड़क पे 15-20 जमा हो जाएंगे, वो क्या बोलेंगे? साहब, एक गरीब आदमी का चक्का बैंड हो गया, रोजी रोटी का है, उसको 5,000 दे. Almost the same attitude is there in the consumer court, and especially in the lower court. So unless until in case of litigation, your defense is 100%, you are going to face the music for sure. Fortunately, Indian public is very docile, forgiving type. We are from the land of Gandhi and Mahavir, and we all believe in destiny. So, and moreover, it requires a lot of perseverance. So there are not sufficient number of the cases, though it has increased too much. But what could have been if you would see so much of the malpractice is going around, so much of the things are going around, that you would feel that ultimately whatever big number is also there, it is also in general very, very small, which would have otherwise deserved to be there. So in general, people just say, okay, let it go over a period of time. The anger is there for some time because it requires a lot of perseverance. One case in the consumer forum is going to take 3 to 5 years at one stage. That is, it can go to the district, then it will go to state, then it will go to national forum, and then you can take it to the Supreme Court. So multiple steps, and everywhere it will take 3 to 5 years. So by the time it is finally settled, unless until you drop out or the complainant drops out in between, it may take about 15 years. So if you would go through any of the decisions, you would see that the story had started about 10, 12, 15 years ago. Now, one of the most important things is the myth is there that the government doctors are not in CPA-NET. It is a wrong thing. All government hospitals are in CPA-NET because even if, unless until you are doing 100% free, even if you are charging 2 rupees for an X-ray, that would make all the patients a consumer and the government doctor will be in the CPA-NET. But fortunately for all the government doctors, because the patient population and the general public also thinks that the government doctors do not come under the CPA-NET. So that's a benefit. There is a compelling evidence that more malpractice is committed than can be recognized, litigated, or compensated. And most of the time, whenever I feel that I am talking about this, everybody feels कि यार ये हमारे लिए नहीं, it can never happen to us. ये पड़ोसी के लिए बात हो रही है, उनको होगा, हम तो भी सब ठीक है. Most of the people, when those who have a practice of maybe 20-25 years, they say कि यार हमारा पेशेंट से रेपो अच्छा है, हमारे को कोई ज्यादा दिक्कत नहीं है, मुन्ना भाई को भी जानते हैं, अकबर भाई को भी जानते हैं, वो सब सेटल हो जाता है, and there is no problem. वो रिकॉर्ड कीपिंग के चक्कर में पड़ेगा. If you would see the record keeping in the private nursing homes, small nursing homes, it's terrible. And if you would see the maximum compensation that has come was in case of Calcutta Emory Hospital, it was to the tune of 15 crores. And we all believe that it cannot happen. I'm sure that everybody must be knowing Dr. Praful Desai. Praful Desai was our Padma Shri, the in charge for the Tata Cancer Hospital. Nobody can doubt his quality of education, skill, experience, dedication, intelligence, etc. But there was a case against him for which he had to fight for 20 years. And in spite of that, he was only exonerated from the criminal liability. Civil liability was still there for him. So the basic tenet is that first, do no harm. But this study which shows very well that the adverse events are 2.9 to 3.7%. It's a very, very large study. And worst part is almost more than half are preventable. More than half are preventable. So whenever there is any complication or any death or something like that, there can be three scenarios. Number one can be there that it was something inherent that would have happened even to my father or my uncle or anybody else because it was not preventable. But the other party would always say that there was an element of preventability which could have been done and it was not prevented. So ultimately what has happened, God only knows. Nobody bothers because that is not going to happen. My words against your words are going to nullify each other. So what is going to work is only the medical record, whatever it is documented. So in general we say कि यार इंडिया में तो सब भगवान के भरोसे चलते हैं. With all due regard, मुझे लगता है कई बार शायद भगवान भी इंडिया के भरोसे चलता है. Another thing that comes in the consumer forum is that there is no medical man in the forum. तो उसको क्या समझ में आएगा? That is the impression. But I believe that probably this is a blessing in disguise. Because if the medical man is there, you can't just go around just like that. But here, say for example, you go through the Harrison. In the first page, any page you would see in the top, it is written head is above, leg is below. And in the middle line, it will be written, no, in some of them cases, that the leg is above and the head is below. In about 4% of the cases in the Japan. And in Germany, 3% of the cases, the head is tilted on the left side, and so on and so forth. So whenever you are giving your literature, just highlight the things which are going to work for you, which is favorable to you. The most important, everybody says, and we all know, that probably the counseling is the best possible thing. We all understand that the counseling is the most important. If your counseling and your rapport is good with the patient, nothing is going to happen. But in case it happens, unless until it is supported by a good medical records, it is going to create a problem because your counseling goes down the drain. The moment he has put the things for litigation, that means your words against his words and the counseling goes down the drain. So good record is good defense, poor record would be poor defense. And like I said, the pathetic is a very respectable word as far as the medical records is concerned. See, I have been helping my friends and colleagues in defending their medical legal cases, negligence cases in the court. And then I realized that this is terrible. Most of the nursing home, it is all verbal. Nothing is written. The gynae person will come. She is seeing 20 patients are waiting in the OPD. She will say, okay, isko DNC ke liye shift karao, isko wahan shift kara, isko ek analgesic lagao, okay, then just all. So nothing is in writing. The only thing which they check along, like I said, paisa jama hua ki nahi. So what is the medical record? Anything that connects the patient, disease, medicine, investigation, nursing home and hospitals are the medical records. These are the various list of the medical records that can happen. But for us, most important thing is outdoor paper, indoor case record, informed consent and discharge summary. The most important single document, if you are seeing a valid informed consent, is the most important document. And it should be real consent. Valid, legal, adult, in condition to give consent by the patient himself and herself. In India, it is a very, very common thing कि वो चाचा, मामा, भतीजा ने consent दे दिया, which is invalid. We are talking about the cold cases, not an emergency situation. It should be free consent without force, undue influence, fraud, misrepresentation, and mistake. Misrepresentation is one of the key words in this because when the problem occurs, they would say, Dr. साहब ने तो कहा था 24 घंटे में भेज देंगे तो कोई problem नहीं. And that is what works later on most of the time. Just a short about this one. Before this was decided in 2008 by Supreme Court. And before that, nobody knew what exactly is wanted by this one. Because if the consent is there, initially decisions, if you go through the timeline of the decisions, you would find that, okay, after hysterectomy, VVF is there, and they have put in a case, you support the literature, the medical textbook, that VF is a known complication, the case is over. Over a period of time, it came, okay, it is complication, known complication, but did you inform that it can happen? and so on and so forth. So you didn't know what exactly is expected from you. And this particular case, the Supreme Court has made its wonderful attempt to make sure that we know what exactly is expected as far as the Indian scenario is concerned. In short, I'll just give you 44-year unmarried female. She had menorrhagia. She gave consent. These are the exact words. Diagnostic and operative laparotomy may be needed. That was written on the consent form. Patient was under anesthesia. They found that this was a severe endometriosis, and the gynecologist wanted to do the hysterectomy. So the junior resident went out and took the consent from the mother for the hysterectomy. And later on, the patient and her fiancé created a lot of ruckus into that the uterus was removed without their consent, and the matter went to the court. And the Supreme Court held that if the laparotomy included hysterectomy with bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy, what was the need to take separate consent from mother? That means that it was not included in the consent. That simply means that the surgeon has gone beyond the consent. So what the doctor should have done? The doctor should have brought the patient out of anesthesia, taken consent from the patient herself, and then should have performed the hysterectomy. And this is not a very uncommon scenario in our practical things. We feel that probably the patient will be benefit, does not need a second time surgery, trouble, expenses, and all those things. But they say that unless until it is an emergency or a life-threatening situation or health-preserving situation. Say, for example, you have done a laparotomy and you find there is a gangrenous bowel. That does not mean that you have to go out and not take the consent. You can do the resection and anastomosis. But like this, in our example, simply it will be there. You have taken a consent for urethrotomy and you find that there is a tight bladder neck. You cannot do the bladder neck incision unless until you have taken a separate consent. So if you anticipate certain situations like this, then you have to take the consent for both the procedures simultaneously. That if we are going to do this, and there is a possibility that this will be there and this problem will be there, then we would do that also. If he gives consent for both the procedures, you can go ahead. Or otherwise, you will have to prove that this particular thing was a life-threatening situation or health-preserving situation in case it goes to the litigation. Litigation mein nahi gaya to sab chalta hai. So what the consent should have, the basic ingredient is nature of treatment, alternatives, risk and benefit of each and every alternative, and there should be explanation about risk and benefits of if the patient refuses any treatment or does not take any treatment. And there should be opportunity for questions also. The consent, very important, like I said, has to be from patient himself or herself. A doctor has to secure consent of the patient before commencing a treatment, should have the capacity to consent, and adequate information concerning the nature of treatment so that he knows what he is consenting to. A doctor should disclose nature and procedure of treatment, purpose, benefit effects, alternatives, outline of substantial risk, adverse consequences of refusing the treatment. I'll just give, in short, the basic philosophy is don't frighten the patient into the surgery, don't frighten the patient out of surgery. Don't frighten into the surgery means, say, for example, there is a ureteric stone. I had a ureteric colic, the GP has already treated. Investigation shows 3 mm lower ureteric stone. He comes to you and then you say, URS nahi karega, to tumhara kidney. That means you are unnecessarily frightening a patient, frightening into the surgery. And similarly, a villager comes for a hydrocele and you talk about pulmonary embolism. That means you are frightening him out of the surgery. So basic philosophy that the Supreme Court wants is don't do those two things. Consent for diagnostic procedure cannot be considered as consent for the therapeutic procedure. This basically line has been put in that judgment for the cardiologists when they do take the patient for angioplasty, and the doctor will come out and would say कि साहब इसको तो डालना है, 2 लाख रुपए जमा करिए. The consent given for a specific procedure will not be valid for conducting some other procedure. एक gallbladder के साथ appendix free वाला काम नहीं चलेगा. Extent of information to secure consent need not be of as stringent variety as Canterbury. Canterbury judgment means it's an American pattern where you have to talk about each and every possible complication that you are aware of. What in Indian scenario, the Supreme Court wants is that you should tell the patient what is good for the patient. And it will depend on the physical and the mental condition of the patient. But if there is a direct question, you have to give a direct answer and an honest answer. The common direct question will be, "Saab main marunga to nahi." So then you have to say yes. But you can quantify and you can always do a rider with that. In 35 years, nobody had died at our place. And we have done the proper investigation, everything fine. And with this particular procedure, all over the world, the rate is like this. So why should you be having like that? So that rider you can explain to them. One thing that Supreme Court, in my opinion, fell short is they could not define how common is common. They are talking that you have to talk about common complications, not the rare complications. So that you don't frighten a patient out from the possible benefit of the surgery. But how common is common has not been specified. So in general, what we say is anything more than 2% is common. So, and whatever is mentioned in the textbook, that you should say. And in addition, whatever is the most dangerous thing, what you suggest is that you talk about death, but you always de-emphasize it during your counseling and your documentation procedure. A blanket consent which you used to take, I permit Dr. Lalit Shah to do anything, any procedure under any anesthesia, that blanket does not work anymore. It has to be in the patient's own language, which the patient understands. Probably over a period of time, probably we are going to have literature like this in our outpatient. One of the things that was about 5-7 years ago, I also was not aware that unless until there is the doctor's signature on the consent, it is not a valid consent at all. Because a consent is basically an agreement between two parties. So only one party cannot put a signature. Your signature has to be there. If your signature is not there and the complainant's lawyer is start, your consent will become invalid. This basically signifies that he has no further questions to ask, and now we can proceed. In this particular case, 11-year-old was operated for infection in ear and ended with the facial paralysis. The signature of stereotype does not absolve any doctor from liability of fully explaining the nature of the risk of operation in the common language understood by the patient. So this is what I am following. Like I said, I am also as good or as bad as it is. I am also very lazy. At my place also the consent is what it was 20 years ago. As a modification, what I am doing is I am asking the patient to write in his own handwriting, one line at least. हमें बीमारी, बेहोशी और ऑपरेशन के बारे में विस्तार से बताया गया है. If the patient is writing this, then whatever is there, that becomes legal कि patient को समझा है, नहीं समझा है. In one of my own case, which has gone against me in the consumer court 4 years ago, this particular line has sued me. Because they were saying कि डॉक्टर साहब ने तो कुछ बताया नहीं है. And when I showed that कि डॉक्टर साहब कहीं लिखा हुआ है, in their own handwriting, in their own language, so that helped. So why should we keep medical record? Because this is the legal requirement. Medical council and NMC directions are there that we have to keep this. And the best defense in the court of law, because otherwise you cannot do any counter allegation. In this particular case, post-operative instructions to avoid rich food, do's and don'ts, etc. were mentioned. So doctor was saved. Another very important thing is about the informed refusal. The rupture of appendix occurred due to delay in surgery. Informed refusal was not taken. And though the patient did not consent for the surgery, was a plea of surgeon, but the surgeon was held negligent. If it is that they are not giving a consent, you document that. That is very, very important. The informed refusal is very, very important. Otherwise, you are keeping a time bomb with you. In this particular case, for within a short period, the patient expired, but so many things were there and well documented that they have done whatever was the best possible in that scenario. So there was nothing like that. This was one example. Owner of nursing home, which happens in a private practice in smaller places. Owner of nursing home called the surgeon to perform surgery. Patient died during surgery. Surgeon contended that I never operated, but the records were contrary. So the surgeon was held guilty and not this. Another thing which is very common is, like I said, record keeping is very funny in the small nursing homes and all that. Many of the cases that I have seen that there is practically no record, there is no consent, but doctors have a lot of gray cell. There was one patient in the operation theater, did the surgery, and the patient somehow the other, because of whatever reasons, had a DOT. So the anesthetist and the surgeon thought, putting their gray cells into action, that okay, you can't differentiate between the fingerprints, antepartum and postmortem. तो मरने के बाद भी अंगूठा लगा लिया तो कैसे पता चलेगा? You cannot differentiate. Nobody would be able to differentiate. So उन्होंने अंगूठा लगा लिया, and later on came to know that he was MA in English. So that cannot work. So you have to be honest, not like that. Like I said, the first one is always painful. The pehla case aapka against hota hai, takleef deta hai. When there was the first case against me, for about 5 to 7 days, I was not able to eat and sleep very comfortably as well. It is said that in CPA, basically the burden of proof is on the complainant. But like I said, in Mercedes scenario, the situation is like that you have to be 100% waterproof, otherwise they would be able to find that source of leak. But one of the important things is the court does not take a good view where it appears that someone is hiding any possible piece of evidence. So in legal language, it is called as coming with the clean hand. If you are able to prove that the complainant is not coming with the clean hand, and if you are not giving your record, that means you are not coming with the clean hand. So that is very, very important thing. The records they are like a scar. It reflects the quality of care. Possible allegation you can think, and the most common allegation is the patient was suffering. We called the doctor, but nobody was coming. That is the commonest allegation. Like then outdoor prescription. It is better to have a duplicate. Nowadays, a good number of the hospitals and the corporate hospitals are having, but probably for individual practitioner, it is not that very easy. Indoor case record, we have to keep all these things, chronological order of progress of disease, monitoring of vitals, pathology, X-ray, sonography report, pre-op preparation, consent, any procedure, various investigations, all these things we must keep. The most important thing remains the copy of the discharge ticket also we must keep, and discharge summary should be good enough. Sufficient information, detailed one. Informed refusal I have talked. Another thing is very common, and especially I'm not talking about the institutes where the residents are there to keep the record, but in individual nursing homes and all that, chaprasi bhi wahi hai, consultant bhi wahi hai, house surgeon bhi wahi hai. So many times the record keeping goes background and is not done. And when the case notice comes from the consumer court, you pick up the file and start writing into this. So what happens is the 5 days notes are written in one go at one hand writing. So it is very important that it should not be too perfect. That is number one. In one of the cases, they have given a decision that it is too perfect a record, which is not a common practice in medicine. So it appears that it was an afterthought and later on written the documents. It should not look like cooked and manipulated, and should not be in the same handwriting with the same pen ki 5 din ka ek hi record likha hua hai. So what you can do is change the pen, change your hand, ask somebody else to write the record. Morning ka aap likhiye, sham ka koi aur likhega, and like this, even if you are doing it later on. Fortunately, in India, ink imaging, handwriting expert opinion, and DNA fingerprinting to pick up the age of that particular notes is not into practice as on now. That is what I say, the discharge summary, a detailed discharge summary is very, very important. So if you are giving a good discharge summary, the fact remains that discharge summary goes with the patient. So whatever things have been mentioned in the discharge summary, you cannot go to his home to change that. So every word is taken for granted and there is no question asked into that. But the fact remains that the indoor file is with you. So there is always a there is always a doubt that it might have been manipulated or the notes have been written later on. So the weightage of that is much less than the facts which has been mentioned in the discharge summary. Like I said, that medical colleges during our tenure teaches us to be a good clinical diagnostician. But it is also very, very important when you go into the practice that you should become a reasonably good social diagnostician as well. Out of the 100 patients that you see, there will be 1 or 2 patients which would be a trouble possible type of person. So it is much better that you send the ball to somebody else. भैया मेरा nursing home छोटा है, मैं छोटा डॉक्टर हूँ, आप बड़ी जगह जाइए, वहाँ कर लीजिए. You operate only 98 patients, 2 patients you send them somewhere else. Another thing that I have been recommending is a discharge consent. Probably this is not the proper word, but I didn't get any better word. It is something like that, that here we've certified a discharge summary. Investigations have been given to us, nature of problem, prognosis, plan of management, treatment given in the hospital, possible complications, failure, need for regular follow-up, precautions, possible follow-up procedures, etc. have been explained to us to our satisfaction. If the patient is at the time of discharge is signing this, they cannot say, especially it happens in our restriction cases. You do it in ureterotomy, the patient disappears for 4 years, and then he comes to say, to fir se waisa ho. While in discharge summary, you have written, you come back again. The periodic counseling record, especially in ICU patient, or a seriously or critical ill patient. A critical ill patient, maybe during the course, normally it was happening as expected, but suddenly it becomes critical, or are the high-risk patients. And for the OPD and OPD discharge and follow-up, all the prescriptions should, and the last line should always be, you come back for review after XYZ, whatever you want to write, 7 days, 1 this. Because one of our own colleague urologists have been penalized because of that, because they had not called for the review. And the judgment they have written that the doctor has abandoned the treatment of the patient and patient has not abandoned the treatment. These were the words in the court judgment. So call everyone after whatever period that you feel is visible. और आएगा तो क्या नुकसान है, पैसा ही देगा ना, फिर से क्या प्रॉब्लम, अच्छा ही. Can it be kept in electronic form? Except for a few things which we need the hard copy, it can be kept in electronic form. Now the NMC and everybody is encouraging you to keep in electronic form, but there would be few things that we need. This is a list, long list that we need to keep in the hard copy. Another thing is how to correct a record. Many times it happens that you are writing a note, you have written something, and you feel, no, this is not proper. You want to improve on that. So there is a legal way of correcting this one. You don't put the white ink and all that, right? So what you need to do is whatever line you have written, you can cut it with a single straight line in such a manner that the previous version can be read clearly. And then you write another version, whatever you want to write, and you put the signature, date, and time. Then it becomes a legally correction. Now, another thing which comes is how long to keep the records. In general, whatever the medical legal cases are happening, that's a different thing that you have to keep till the case is finally settled. Otherwise, 5 years is good enough. Legally required is 3 years from the cause of action. The word cause of action is very peculiar because everything cannot be covered into that. Say, for example, you have done a sterilization operation, and after 5 years, the patient becomes pregnant. So the time the patient gets that information that now the family has become, the pregnancy is there in the family, cause of action starts from there. We will assume only our surgery time is the cause of action. It is not like that. And worst is for the pediatric people, because they have another limitation of 2 years after the child becomes adult. That means they have to keep it for 21 years. But जितना कर सकते हैं उतना करेंगे, बाकी तो God is great. Another thing is how to destroy the record. Whenever you want to destroy the record, the legal requirement is you give an advertisement in one of the newspapers, maybe a very uncommon newspaper in a small one, a small box advertisement, that the documents are going to be destroyed. After 1 month, whosoever wants to take up the records can take it. And after that, you can either destroy or keep whatever you want to do on paper. That would be destroyed records. So time to change the Hippocratic Oath. I believe that the one line is there for the benefit of my patient. I understand that everything, it was there, it is there, it would always remain there, but I would say not at my cost. I would like that we have to save our skin, we have to love our skin. So take home message would be honest to yourself and your patient, keep good medical records, always take informed consent, don't be a very good salesman just to sell the surgery, have requisite qualification, don't take case beyond your capability. If you are not a qualified person into that, or you are not doing sufficient number of cases like that, you better refer it to somewhere else. Another thing is don't take it beyond the capacity of your setup. I have a small nursing home of 10-bedded hospital. I don't have an ICU. So if I have to, I can do a wonderful TURP. There is no problem. But if I have to do a TURP, which is having a cardiac ejection fraction of maybe 15-20% and all that, and if I am doing at my nursing home, that is negligence. I have to do it in a hospital where ICU is there and cardiology services are there. Don't take any case without full workup. Don't take case on the basis of some ultrasound report by somebody else, because this is very common. It's ultrasound report ke basis pe aapne operate kiya, and you are not able to find that. And you should not hesitate to take second opinion, need to convert, need to open, or need to refer. Another thing is cover yourself in your hospital with professional risk management or indemnity insurance, and please prevent preventable medical errors. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lalit Shah, for that wonderful presentation. on a very, very different topic, and which probably is neglected, and we cannot afford to neglect anymore, particularly in the last few decades when the Consumer Protection Act has come and the era of consumerism has started, where the patient wants. So I think very important to understand what he said is, the first is how to build a rapport with the patient. So it's the first and the foremost thing probably is to develop a doctor-patient relationship, which probably would help in a big way. And then it will be supported by the records that you keep in a proper manner. So these two things are probably the most important thing to avoid any kind of problems and issues related to medical legal things. We have today with us Dr. Ashok Sharma also, who is a well-known person. He was the president of North Zone USI and has been also working in the medical legal aspect. So Dr. Ashok Sharma, I welcome you. Thanks for joining us. You can just give your brief comments on Dr. Lalit's presentation. Dr. Ashok, please.
Yeah. Speaking about Dr. Lalit, Dr. Lalit is a very difficult task basically. He has enumerated everything, whatever we want. In nutshell, I just want to tell that the record keeping should be like Dastane-Goi. Dastane-Goi is a Persian art in which somebody tells a story and the entire scene is created in front of closed eyes. So your record should be like that. It speaks about itself. Number one. Number two, we should always insist on the patient's history in his own words. Because most of the times what we do, that we don't include patient's history in his verbatim. So initial part of the history taking should be in the words of patient, and then we should interrogate the patient. These are two most important things as far as the documentation is concerned. And as Dr. Lalit Shah said, of course, I learned from Dr. Lalit Shah that now we take the discharge consent also. So we have a system of discharge consent, and every document what we get the patient to sign has to have the ID proof of the patient, because anybody can put a chidiya on it and forget, and then we don't remember who the person is. So every consent, every document, whatever we get the patient to sign has to have this signatory's ID proof. That is another important thing which we have to take. Thank you, Dr. Shivam, for inviting me. I really enjoyed Dr. Lalit Shah's presentation, and I really appreciate your online classes. Many times I attend, many times I'm busy, but I really appreciate your effort of online classes, not only for SMS residents, but whosoever wants to attend it. Very good, Dr. Shivam, and it's a very, very good beginning, and it will go long way as far as teaching is concerned. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ashok, for joining us and sparing your valuable time and giving those comments. Thanks. So anybody from our faculty, Dr. Nachiket, Neeraj, and our residents, if you want to have any question to Dr. Lalit Shah, please go ahead. And in the meantime, those who have joined us on Zoom, if they have any query, they can just put a message or just, yes, please go ahead. Come, Nachiket.
So I just wanted to ask about the indemnity programs which have been started, especially by North Zone. So were you able to look about it? Do you think that it's good to be a part of that indemnity, even though we are part of different indemnities? Like I have coverage by, two indemnity covers I have, roughly around 50 lakhs, 60 lakhs. So do you think that then you've seen the North Zone indemnity? So any comment about that? And
No, I saw that, and that one is pretty good one, and there is no harm. And that is pretty good. outdoor record or a busy practitioner like 100 one patients a day. It is better to keep OPD report for all of these. So that is what I am saying. And in general, good number of the institutions and corporate hospitals have started keeping that. Like I am also an individual practitioner and I am not keeping the record because it is very, very difficult to do that. But those young boys who are computer savvy, for them it is not very difficult because there are so many systems are there where they are writing here and it will be recorded there and it will be kept there. So we are not so we are not keeping. So it is very, very important that the record that we are keeping, you should be able to take care into that. And like I said, you have to be a reasonably good social diagnostician. आपको पता लगना चाहिए कि ये आदमी बदमाशी कर रहा है. And another thing that we suggest is that what I am practicing is whenever I am writing my prescription paper, after one first page I write here in the last PQ at the bottom. And in the back is when I am writing into that I write it complete. So and then is mark number 1. So that next page when this page is finishing and I am taking the second one, I would always write here to continue. But don't write continue when the first page is because this is what had happened is one of the cases on document we could, that was for some other one. On document we could find that he had attended 8 times. But he has submitted 7 papers to the court of law. So we knew that he has not come with a clean hand, and where we had advised him biopsy, that paper he has sent from the court, and the doctor, we could save the it will be good if you can. It will be. If you are able to do that, that is fine. But कहाँ तक करेगा, क्या करेगा? We have to understand that we have to take chance that whatever system you would adopt, that would be only 99.9% fully surety there. 100% surety will not come. So 0.01% chance you have to take and pray God. तब हम थोड़ी करेंगे. भगवान कुछ करेगा सर. Which one? Consent, see, it is very important, the consent that has to be signed or the counseling which has been to be done. See, the counseling will start from the outpatient, that the consultant has to do. But the consent taking signature can be from anywhere person in the team. If you would see our consent that we have put, and he has been instrumental in translating it to Hindi, which is available on USI website, you would find that the consent is given for not one person. It will be Dr. Shivam and his team. All right. So any person of the team can sign, put a signature, but of course he must be a qualified doctor. And number 2, it should be from his team.
Nowadays, to the patients and their attendants, they want second opinion. They are being treated somewhere and they want to transfer those papers and with some other hospital. So can we allowed to be those case papers the patient or
no, your MCI regulation and all NMC regulation says very clearly if the patient or their attendants are asking for the document when the patient is admitted with you or he is going out, it is your duty to give them the document within 72 hours. All right, that is number 1. Number 2, you can always invent some excuse that you are busy, you do not have time. That is one possibility. Another thing that you can do is that okay, you go and take an NOC from the account section first that you have settled all the bills. So that can delay and give you by whatever time he is asking. Another thing, say for example, patient is admitted somewhere else and he is coming to you for a second opinion. See, it is in general your basic duty. Number 1, to be honest to yourself. Number 2 is to try to save your belief as much as possible, but not at the cost of your sleep. The best thing that you can say is that unless that is the line that I need to see the patient before seeing the patient.
I think there is a question in the chat box. How about acceptance of electronic records in medical legal cases? About electronic records.
Like I said, this will be accepted, electronic record, but the few things, the list which I have put, OPD paper, the consent and all those, that we need in the physical form, hard copy. And that has to be kept for that speculated period.
I think that answers Dr. Manoj Roy, and thanks Dr. Ashok Khandaka for their comment. So I would request now, because people maybe have a OT going on and we cannot afford to go on, and but we would wish that sometime we may have a little more time to discuss these things which are really important. I would request Dr. Nachiket to give a memento to Dr. Lalit Shah. It was a real privilege and honor for us, the Department of Urology, to have the President-elect of Urological Society of India come here and give a live presentation. Thank you, sir. So thanks to all those who joined us today on Zoom and YouTube. And thank you and have a good day.